Hello, everybody, and welcome to Climate Cuisine, a podcast of Climate Diet. My name is Jane DeMarines, and I'm the Executive Director of Climate Diet. And we are thrilled and honored today to have with us Sarah Kogel-Smucker, Montgomery County's Climate Change Officer, and one of the leading climate architects, policy architects in the region. Sarah oversees the county's ambitious goal of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 80% by 2027 and reaching net zero or 100% by 2035. Wow. And we'll get to that in the questions. With 20 years of experience in climate litigation, advocacy, and policy development, including major work in New York City and the District of Columbia, she brings deep expertise and a powerful sense of mission to this role. We're excited to explore how local climate leadership, community engagement, and even the food we choose can accelerate meaningful change. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for that introduction, and thank you so much for having me. And thank you to you and your colleagues for all the work that you're doing in the county to advance these climate goals.
Thank you so much. It's good to be a partner with people with your kind of goals. So let's dig right into those goals. They're really ambitious. I don't know if they're the most ambitious in the nation, but reduction by 80% in emissions by 2027, not too far off, right? 2 years, and then 100% by 2035. So I guess my question is, what strategies are you using to try to accomplish that?
Great question. So we do have some of the most ambitious goals in the country, but these are not just goals that, we're not working on. We have a climate action plan that was developed government-wide and community-wide in 2021, and it is our roadmap on how to meet these goals. It has 86 actions in the plan that lay out changes that need to be made government and community-wide for us to reduce our climate change pollution 100% by 2035. And this isn't a plan that's just sitting on a shelf. We are rapidly implementing it. So we are just compiling our progress for fiscal year 2025. So I don't have those numbers yet. But, we have made significant progress on many of these goals. We have started the vast majority of them, and several are completed and institutionalized. So, we're making these changes as a government and as a community.
I have seen that action plan, but it's been quite a few years since I looked at it, but it is impressive. And 86 separate actions, that's a lot. So thank you for that good work and the role you're playing as part of it. So you have spent decades advocating, litigating, developing climate policy in major cities. I was wondering how your experience, both in New York City, quite a big difference from Montgomery County and DC, but New York City in particular, it's next to an ocean, it has a massive population. How does that compare, and how did that inform your approach to what you're doing in Montgomery County?
So I worked in New York City government for nearly 10 years and then moved to DC government and moved here. And the through line is that I've worked for the local government where I've lived. I really love working with my community and in my community and at the community level. I think there's so much impact we can have at local government. All of these places have really ambitious climate change goals and very innovative actions and approach to climate solutions. In New York City government, I was an attorney, so I was on the team that sued fossil fuel companies for climate deception. I was the lead lawyer on the county's, on the city, I'm so used to saying county, on the city's post-Hurricane Sandy resilience and rebuilding plan with billions of dollars of infrastructure projects. So exactly as you said, sea level rise is critical for resilience in New York City. And one of the projects I worked on is elevating East River Park. So creating a barrier on Manhattan's east side to sea level rise, and that actually protects the community I grew up in. So it was really meaningful to me. Montgomery County shares that ambition, shares the solution oriented, but really to me, two amazing things stand out in Montgomery County. First of all, it's the political consensus. You know, there's a lot of support for climate action in New York City and DC, but there's also opposition. There's folks really questioning, is this worth it? Should we do it? Why do we need to make these changes? And they're represented, within political leadership. And in Montgomery County, all of our elected officials that I've engaged with understand that climate action is essential, that we need to do our part, that we should be a leader, and that requires real investment, real changes, real action. So that really consensus of understanding is so unique to Montgomery County. And then, the community partners in Montgomery County are just incredible. We have a population that has so many vibrant and active nonprofits and activists and professionals who work on this as a national issue, and folks who are deeply engaged in their communities. And so, we have the ability to work with community partners to advance climate action in a very robust way. And that's something that's very hopeful.
So I guess just an add-on to that question, how does the business community support this? And is the business community on board? And, are they making grants to, help fund? All of this costs money, of course, to fund the initiatives. I mean, I know our taxes, of course, but others that are, well, like me. I'm not just looking for money. I'm just wondering, really, is the business community there in our county for this action?
It's such a timely question because of the real financial constraint local nonprofits are facing. So, as a county, yes, we do fund our climate action and the implementation of our climate action plan through taxes in the operating budget and through bonds in our capital budget. But we've also really ambitiously gone after grants. And historically, we focused on state and federal grants. Um, and we've had a lot of success. We're not anticipating a lot of opportunity for future federal climate grants over the next few years because of the change of policies of the administration, though we are working our absolute best to retain the grants that we do have. The state has really stepped up. So the state, for example, has released a $64 million local government grant for local governments across Maryland that we are laser focused on applying for and making sure we can maximize our share of. But, we do need to seek out and receive private funding. And our departments have started to do that, but there's more that can be done. A lot of times our local business community has taken really important sustainable actions in their own operations and in their own
Well, that's
businesses,
good to hear.
but has not necessarily done their charitable environmental giving locally. So we are hoping to see more of that going forward. Um, and one thing I do want to mention in terms of the business community is a fantastic resource for our local businesses is the County and Bethesda Greens Green Business Certification
Yeah.
Program, where it's a partnership with a local Bethesda environmental nonprofit called Bethesda Green and the county. And local businesses can get certified and promoted as green businesses and get the resources and tools to do that. And sustainable purchasing is one of the pillars, and that does include looking at food purchasing and increasing plant-based purchasing as a business. So that's
Awesome.
one good resource that we have in the county for our local businesses.
That is good to know. I didn't know about the certification program. I know Bethesda Green and talked to them recently at a conference. And I was going to follow up with them, and I haven't. So I don't know if as a nonprofit, if you can get certified. We're businesses. I'll have to check into that. So following up sort of on the business aspect, your legal work included suing fossil fuel companies for climate deception. How does holding major polluters accountable fit alongside the local community level actions needed to reduce emissions?
So I've been on the team suing fossil fuel companies for climate deception twice, once in New York City and once in DC. And I think that movement to hold fossil fuel companies legally accountable for the confusion and deception that they knowingly and intentionally sowed to slow down climate action and stop momentum for climate solutions is important, because as we were just talking about, we need to make these changes to our system to mitigate, but also to become resilient. And that's expensive. And our local communities, our local individuals are all stuck footing the bill for a problem that was largely and is largely caused by fossil fuel companies. And so, we need to continue to work for holding these companies accountable, to work for international and national solutions, but we can't wait for it, right? Climate change is here, and it's going to get worse if we don't all do our part. And that's where, focusing where we have control in our local communities, at our local government level, in our own individual choices and actions is so essential, because we can't wait for those solutions. We need to take action now.
So that leads me to a follow-up question. Montgomery County is rapidly advancing resilience planning, especially after national lessons from events like Hurricane Sandy. Where do you see the greatest resilience gaps locally, and how is the county addressing them?
So climate change is here, and it is causing more extreme weather events. So if you've lived in the county a few decades, I haven't, but many folks have,
I have.
you know that there's more frequent extreme storms. There's been more frequent tornadoes as of recent years. There's more frequent flood events. There's more extreme heat days in the summer. And that's projected to get significantly worse if we do not do our part worldwide to combat climate change. But we need to plan for what's happening and for the changes to come. So one big area of vulnerability is flooding. We are not a coastal community like I was talking about, like New York City with that sea level rise. But when there's those really extreme rain events where you get a ton of rain in a short amount of time, you see localized flooding. And most recently, we saw that near Sligo Creek, where cars got stranded and flooded roads. So the county is doing a number of things to address that. One, we have flood sensors that we've put out in roads. And so we get notice of flooding and can shut down those roads before vehicles, get in and get stuck. We're doing a lot of outreach to tell folks, turn around, don't drown. Your vehicle can get stranded and really start to float in just as little as 6 inches of water. And so if you're driving and you see that water on the roadway, you think you might be able to make it through, but don't take the risk. Just turn around, head somewhere safe, take a different route, wait for the flooding to abate a bit. and keep yourself and our first responders safe. We also are installing mesonet stations across the county, and mesonet stations are local weather stations that, first of all, means that we have control over our weather information regardless of what happens at the federal level. And also it gives us ground data, so we know ground saturation, we know ground temperature, and we can better predict how much flooding we're going to see or if snow is going to stick in the winter.
That is impressive.
Our Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is really been a part of making this happen statewide, and it's a partnership with UMD and in the climate office, we've been big supporters of it because, we need this to keep our community safe, and it's important to invest in it now so that we have it in place for the future. But we need a lot more on flooding. So we have undertook a comprehensive flood management plan, which is a multi-departmental process to map future flood risk for 11 key watersheds in the county. And, the federal government should be doing this. They are the ones that map flood risk, but they only look backwards. So all the federal flood maps are based on past information. They don't include flood predictions from climate change. And we need that information for planning for the county, and property owners can take that information and use it to make decisions about mitigating flood risk on their property, preparing in case of a flood. So we are that's going to be a multi-year process, and we are underway, but we have a lot more to go as well. So that's a key area where we've started the work, but really to understand our flood risk and better prepare for it, we have this whole process to go.
Well, you mentioned Department of Homeland Security. I worked for the Inspector General for Department of Homeland Security in my last job. And FEMA, of course, is a key player. We wrote reports on deficiencies, but it's been quite a while since I've been there. So I'm not clear from what your answer was, that are they not doing enough? Or they're not at this time? Are they a partner with communities? They have certainly huge resources. It's the biggest department, I believe, next to the military. It's the biggest department in the federal government. So there's a lot of resources.
FEMA has been a very helpful partner in increasing our local flood preparedness and, preparedness for extreme weather events. But the FEMA flood maps don't take into account climate change, and we're not anticipating that they're going to in the next few years at least. So, we want to do that mapping as a county and make sure the county government and residents and community members have that information. And so our Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security is part of that process, but the process is actually being led by our Department of Environmental Protection as part of their climate resilience efforts.
It's impressive to hear all the things that are happening. I'm going to switch to talking about food for a minute. Food systems are a major but often overlooked area of climate action. What role do you see food choices, food waste reduction, and plant-forward community education, like climate? We have a school program where we teach it, and we've been funded by Montgomery County grants to teach a program called The Power of Food in schools with food tasting. But what do you see, again, playing out in the county in meeting, and how is that helping meet the county climate targets?
Food is an incredibly important part of both climate mitigation, stopping our climate change pollution, and climate resilience, making sure that we are a resilient community in emergencies. So the vast majority of the county's greenhouse gas emissions, climate change pollution, comes from buildings and transportation. But we take our goals incredibly seriously, but we're not limiting them. We're doing this because we want to address climate change globally. And globally, food choices make a big difference in climate change pollution. Globally, food systems generate about a third of the greenhouse gas emissions climate change pollution, and animal food production is a major driver of methane emissions, land use, deforestation. So the county's food efforts are happening in a number of ways, and there are three or four I want to highlight. So one is folks may be aware or may not know that we have an agricultural reserve. So about a third of the county, 93,000 acres, is reserved in
Oh,
the agricultural.
we lost your sound.
Oh,
We lost.
sorry about that. Can you hear
Okay.
now?
If you don't mind repeating the last kind of sentence.
Sure, sorry. So the county has an agricultural reserve. It's about a third of the county, 93,000 acres, and it supports local farming, and that produces local food. But our Office of Agriculture also works with our local farmers to support best management practices and sustainable farming. So that we want to reduce the carbon footprint of the farming, and then we want to promote people buying food locally. And that really, if you're buying plant-based food from our local farmers, you are reducing the transit, you're reducing the overall emissions. We also have an Office of Food Systems Resilience, and the Office of Food Systems Resilience looks at our food system very holistically. So they do focus a lot on food insecurity. It is, essential to folks' basic needs if they don't have enough food that day, that week, that month, that year. And we work as a county and with many community partners to provide that. Part of the Office of Food Systems Resilience supports groups that are addressing both food insecurity and sustainable food systems. So they're working on them in a very integrated way. We support our local farmers markets. We promote them. We have a compost pilot. Folks can bring compost to I think it's 4 farmers markets across the county. And we are working to really expand composting further countywide. We also encourage more sustainable purchasing within government. And there is a ways to go on that, but we are taking action. So 2 things that I wanted to highlight. One, our Department of Corrections has been partnering with a nonprofit, the Good Food Purchasing organization, to look at the carbon footprint and other value pillars of their food purchasing and get really expert guidance on making some changes to reduce it. And that does include promoting more plant-based eating and shifting the overall menu to more plant-based meals.
Well, that's great news.
And so that's underway, but it is something that we're really excited about. And then we have a Climate Ready Office Challenge where our Department of Environmental Protection works with groups within county government. So, a group of colleagues in a department or office at a location form and say they want to take actions to make their own workplace more sustainable. And Department of Environmental Protection provides a lot of guidelines, and those guidelines do include a look at the food purchasing and so a lot of resources to make more plant-based choices. And then lastly, we formed Climate Smart, and Climate Smart is a campaign to give folks easy, everyday actions that they can take to make more climate-friendly choices in their own lives, and across 5 categories. And one of the categories is food. And we just literally last week, so this podcast is excellent timing, added a ready to make bigger change category because Climate Smart focuses on some small changes. And the ready to make bigger change in the food category includes shift to a more plant-rich diet. And
Awesome.
has just, a short information to encourage someone to, look at that, maybe make that choice a little more often. And I think that's something that really resonates with me. I have to admit, I am not vegan or vegetarian, but I do look at my food choices and I do try to make plant-based choices way more often than non-plant-based choices. So I think, it doesn't have to be perfection. It is, can you take one climate smart action today or tomorrow or this week that maybe you weren't taking last week?
I'm glad I'm glad to hear you say that because I think it's much more realistic. And my organization doesn't promote veganism directly. We certainly promote plant-based eating, but we promote reduced meat consumption. And we have a pledge, a meat down pledge, and we ask people just give it up one day a week. And we don't say for a year or we don't say for 2 weeks. It's like whatever. If it's 1 week and you just try it and it's not for you, well, okay. But a lot of people do try it and realize that there's so many delicious foods out there, and there's so many also, plant burgers that are really indistinguishable. Burger King did a taste testing with their customers. This is maybe three or 4 years ago, and nobody could tell the difference in the taste testing. People have said to me that they can tell the difference, but they're delicious. They look the same. They kind of smell the same. So if you need a burger, you can certainly get one made of plants, and it's healthier for your own health, which people forget. Red meat has a lot of saturated fat, and it clogs your arteries. There's just no two ways about it. We partner with Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and Neil Bernard, who is the head of that organization, and is very visible and does a lot of talking, and he's done the podcast. He said even people as young as teens, 14, 15, are already showing signs of plaque in their arteries from saturated fat from red meat. So it's so disturbing when you think of the danger of that. I think of like football players doing very strenuous work that, depending on how much plaque is adhering to their arteries, they could be put in a very dangerous situation from the strenuous type of, football playing or things. But anyway, so we do, to your point about giving up meat on a more gradual basis, we absolutely promote that. And my daughter did some calculation for me. She was a PhD student at the time at Berkeley. So if the whole population of the United States gave up meat just one day a week for 1 year, it's equal to taking 25 million gas-powered cars off the road. So it's huge. And a lot of people really don't think of food as the polluter. They do think of cars as the polluter. So I think it's a good comparison to use. So getting back to all the great things the county is doing, I'm so happy to hear what an aggressive program the county has. I did have one or two more questions if you still have time.
Absolutely.
So you touched on this a little bit. Montgomery County is home to diverse communities with different needs and resources. And if you could expand a bit on how you're ensuring the climate initiatives from energy programs to outreach reach every neighborhood equitably.
It's a great question. A huge strength of our county is our diversity, and that our climate solutions need to come from all communities across the county and work for all communities across the county. And, historically, the government hasn't been ideal about engaging really equitably, having resources and benefits engage equitably, and having the downsides of our energy or other systems, be felt equitably. So, the county has racial equity and social justice goals that I'm very proud we stand firm on, despite what changes may be happening at the federal level. We know our values and we're working to advance them. And so some examples have been that we have increased other language outreach in a variety of ways in climate-related programs. So our circling back with our Office of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, most of their messaging now is coming in English and Spanish, and the Climate Office has partnered with them to translate all the emergency alerts and build that into a system into the top 7 languages used in the county. Our Department of Environmental Protection just somewhat recently hired a full-time outreach staff member focused on equitable community engagement, who is bilingual. We have other Spanish-speaking outreach staff as well, but this is focused on climate engagement with historically underserved communities. We look at our spending. So when we are making investment choices, decisions where grants are given, one consideration is this serving a equity emphasis area, which is, one of the measures of a area where they have historically has not received the same level of investment and has folks with additional economic needs. So, there's a real focus across county government. There's a ways to go to get there, but it's incredibly important. Not only because it's the right thing to do, but because that's how we're going to have lasting, sustainable climate solutions. We're going to do it as a community, and that's what's really going to work.
That is impressive, especially the translation and getting all the information into the many different languages. So I'm so glad to hear that. So my final question is, given your vantage point, you've been both on the legal and practical sides of climate action. What gives you hope today, and what can residents do right now to make the most meaningful impact on climate change in their daily lives?
I have a lot of hope on climate, and that can be hard. There have been real headwinds recently. I've been working on trying to see climate action since I was a college student environmental activist in the 1990s. And, you can look and say we haven't made enough progress, and that's true, but you can also look at all the progress we have made and all the opportunities that we have to make progress on things under our control. I think the best thing that gives you hope is doing something, right? So I have a lot of hope because I get to work on climate full time. And so I get to be part of solutions, see things that are happening, know what the county is doing. See these changes, see the county fleet transition to electric vehicles, see solar panels come up on county buildings, see our food system, become more locally focused and more sustainable. So in terms of what folks can do, I think just do something, because if you take action, you're going to feel better. And when you feel better, you're more willing to take action. And it's a pretty good cycle. And a great way to start is Climate Smart, because these are easy, everyday actions that folks can take to make more climate friendly choices in their own lives, start small and also start with something that you want to do. So, maybe you want to, next time you go to the grocery store, plan one more plant-based meal. Maybe you want to try riding the bus instead of driving one time, where, instead of just automatically getting in your car. One thing I love to do is shop secondhand. There's wonderful thrift stores across the county. I really enjoy it. It's a fun hobby for me. It might not be for someone else, and so then they could do that. But find something that resonates with you, that you're willing to do to make a change in your day-to-day life, and then do it, and then try to keep doing it. And I think, we really have made progress, and we can get there, but we all do need to step up and pitch in.
That is great advice. Sarah, it's just been a huge pleasure and such an enlightening podcast to learn more about what the county is doing, and what your leadership is doing, bringing all your expertise from New York City and Washington, D.C. To the county. It's so impressive to hear the full program. If I can be of help, your Climate Smart campaign, if there's anything I can post on our website for our audience, I'm glad to do that, and we can talk about that offline. But just a huge thank you to Sarah Kogel-Smucker for her leadership, for joining us today. Her work shows how local climate action can be bold, strategic, and grounded in community needs. At Climate Diet, we believe food is one of the most immediate and personal ways individuals can help meet those ambitious climate goals. So take a look at our website too, and look at some consumer advice from us. From reducing food waste to choosing more plant-forward meals, every action adds up, as Sarah has said. So we can all do something. So thank you for listening and being a part of the movement toward a healthier, more sustainable Montgomery County. Thank you, Sarah, and thank you all for listening.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you to listeners for engaging on this topic.